All right, welcome everybody to the latest Meet the Sponsors episode. Today we have two special guests, Chris Dickerson and Brian Nunez from Horizon Hobby. Chris is president, CEO, and Brian is the Losi brand manager and also the surface category brand manager. Brian, Chris, how are you guys doing?
Doing great, Alex. Thanks for having us on today. Looking forward to catching up with you as always.
There's Chris. Yeah, we saw Chris. Chris, I saw you at PRI. Thank you for being my guest at the president's panel just recently. That was awesome.
It was awesome. It was really good. And thanks to you inviting me a couple of years ago, Losi displayed at PRI this year, and we look forward to being back again next year. It's a great target market for us. Brian headed that up. So yeah, it was good. And yeah, it was great to be on the panel with you and good to connect again today.
That was a good event. And also not just PRI, but I saw Brian at the Mint 400s, the makeup race for the Mint 400, which meant the 2022 Mint 400 is coming up in March, but we had the makeup race just last month in Vegas. And I saw Brian there set up. You had a really nice setup for Losi. Congratulations for that.
Yeah, so this year, December Mint 400 was new for us. We had a new Losi logo, new branding, new tents, new feather flags. So that was a big part of that. So that I think had a lot to do with the cohesive look. Everybody had the same shirts. So slowly getting there, but 2022, I think is going to be the year we're going to do a lot of good activation there.
You guys have done a lot now. So Chris and I have known each other, I don't know, over a decade. I think we met back at when I was with Team Lucas, and you were marketing for Horizon Hobby. And then I want to say you had maybe 11 brands, and the next year you had 12, and then 15, and 17. How many brands is Horizon up to now?
Well, in 2018, it's a little deceptive because in 2018, we acquired our largest competitor. So we picked up some additional brands. But on the surface side of things, where most of our motorsports activation is, we have three primary brands. We have our Arma brand, which really speaks to that kind of extreme basher that just wants to go out and go fast and wreck stuff. We have Losi, which Brian works with, that really is kind of that traditional motorsports person. So there's somebody who loves motorsports, and RC is just a way they can kind of continue that love of motorsports. And then we have a brand called Axial, which I always think of as it's the RC Jeep life. And so we really focus on those three brands as our primary. We do still have probably about 15 to 20 brands in total, but a lot of them are very segmented and speak to other markets that, you know, probably this audience isn't all that interested in.
Well, you never know. A lot of these racers,
you never know.
Several racers actually have airplanes, right?
That is true. Yeah. And again, you know, an airplane going 200 miles an hour is pretty darn impressive, regardless of if you're a pilot or a race car driver. You know, a fifth scale airplane going 200 miles an hour catches your attention.
True. Now educate me real quick. You just said the word surface. So those of us who are new to RC cars, there's surface category, which is obviously vehicles on the ground. Air category, I'm assuming, which is the airplanes and helicopters, and then water categories.
We actually we keep our boats and water we consider that surface. Okay. We don't do submarines, so we don't really go below the surface of the water. So we consider pretty much our business is surface, like you said, cars, boats, anything that drives or goes on water. Air is anything that flies. That's the two big segments of our business.
Right. Now, I've known Losi the longest. And Brian, how long have you been with Losi as the brand manager? And then that's obviously in the surface category. What other surface brands that Chris just mentioned are you involved with?
So I've been the Losi brand manager. Is actually a recent change for me, but I've been with Horizon under the surface team for going on 10 years next month. Wow. I started in engineering and development, halfway through transition to licensing and marketing. So as part of the rest of the surface brands, I manage the Losi brand independently, but everything else from the licensing and team perspective for across the surface category. So if it's a Lucas boat or a Miss Geico boat, I handle that. If it's an Axial Jeep, I take care of that. If it's a Losi race car, I handle that. So I'm still involved with a lot of the surface side, with a lot of focus on Losi.
Excellent. And then in what series do you currently have sponsorships with Losi?
Losi, our big event is the Mint 400 that you mentioned. So we got big plans there. PRI is a really, really focused group in the racing, right? Especially compared to SEMA, which is a great event, but also has a lot of other segments that we don't really partake in. So between Mint 400 and PRI, those are our two full-scale events that we really put a lot of attention at.
And then I'll throw this out to both of you because Chris, you may also have an answer for this. But when it comes to motorsports, it might seem obvious why an RC car brand would want to sponsor motorsports. But what are your primary objectives with sponsoring either series or race teams or getting involved with motorsports in general?
Yeah, we see a lot of it. It's customer focused. So we have customers who, maybe somebody who just loves motorsports, but not everybody, has the means, the physical ability, the money to go out and race the Mint 400. So they're going to watch it, they're going to live it, they're going to come out and enjoy it. And we make, a vehicle under Losi called the Baja Ray that's a scale replica of it. And it allows somebody to go home and kind of experience what it might be to be, a racer in the Mint 400. It gives you that same sense of, you're into that segment, that type of racing. Losi really focuses on that kind of, off-road. And then recently we've gotten into kind of drag racing, kind of no prep drag racing. And the idea is to take the full scale experience and boil it down to a smaller size so more people can have it accessible to them and have that same thrill of racing and going fast and beating their buddy.
Right on, right on. Well, I think every racer I know, or almost everyone, I think, has RC cars. And if the more popular ones tend to have RC cars of their own vehicles, which they're promoting for their sponsors. Do you look more for the racer when you're sponsoring or building a vehicle to sell, or are you looking for the branding on that vehicle? Because with Lucas, you had a royalty-free licensing agreement to run the Lucas logo on the RC car, but there really wasn't a driver that you were promoting. It was more of the brand itself. How does that strategy work now?
Well, I think for us, what we typically do, you're right. We find brands that we feel reach a target customer that we also want to go after. And you're right. We've worked with Lucas Oil for a long time. You helped us establish that relationship. Brands like Rockstar that I think you helped us with back in the day too. Brian mentioned Miss Geico. Brian can speak to some of our newer brands that we're working with. And we tend to find, those brands are maybe the primary sponsor for a race team. K&N's a great example. We've worked with them for years as well. And they're a primary sponsor for a lot of these race series. We're not a primary sponsor, but we may be an associate sponsor. We may start to do a replica of a full-scale car in RC. There are times where as we get deeper into it, if we can find a team or an athlete, a driver that we feel really could be a great ambassador for our brand and help make that connection even stronger, we will go that extra step. But a lot of times it starts with us having a relationship with some of these more endemic brands. Brian, maybe you can speak to some of the newer brands and relationships and how that's working too.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it has to do with timing as well. It takes anywhere from 12 to 18 months to develop an RC car, right? And it's not just easy for us just to pull, all right, we'll do a short course truck or a U4 truck. So a lot of times, right now, for example, we're starting development on vehicles. Where as we scope that out, we're looking for what's our target audience with this car and who is a good brand or who's a good ambassador that's going to help us carry that flag, right? Because at the end of the day, we're really just trying to legitimize, our brand message. So that really just whoever can carry that flag the strongest in our point of view is kind of who we're going to select.
So I know someone I see out there in off-road a lot, and that's Casey Curry. How is Casey Curry doing for the brand, and what is he doing that helps promote? Because he's not promoting Horizon as much as he's promoting Horizon's brands.
Correct. Yeah, Casey's probably one of our, if not our best ambassadors when it comes to both Axial and Losi. One, just from himself as an individual, he's a family man. He has 2 sons. His wife is getting into racing, Allie. But he also brings a lot of more value, right? Casey, over COVID, built a media team. So he has 3 full-time employees that can build content. So now it's easy for him and it makes sense. Hey, we're going to go out and use this YouTube series with our full-scale Jeeps. Why not include RC cars in them? So he's always involving us in a really organic way. So he brings a lot of those values. He also brings, the Curry brand, of course, Fox Racing, Monster Energy. So he brings a lot of value in those aspects as well, but more to B2B plays.
So when you're creating vehicles to sell through some racers and some of your brand ambassadors like Casey, are you selling them only at Horizon shops? Or are you selling them online? Are you selling them through other retailers? And I forgot to ask you, Chris, how many retail stores does Horizon Hobby have now?
Yeah, so in the US, we sell to pretty much every local hobby store in the country. There's about 1,500 of those in the US across the country. Most of you watching this or listening, you probably have a local hobby shop and you probably know where it is. We're a primary seller through them. We do sell a lot through our own e-commerce site. We have 2 of those. We sell through Amazon. We sell through other third-party markets to reach the target customer we want. We try to make the product as accessible to people, wherever they want to buy it. And so, that's a great way, but it's still, a lot of it is the local hobby store is kind of still that engagement point, for the community. And we sell primarily through them is still our #1 sales channel.
Right. Do you sell at the races themselves? So when you have a racer that goes and activates at a certain event that they race in, do they ever sell or do they give away product?
It depends on the event, but maybe you can speak to that, Brian. I think in some instances we have a lot of success with that. And I know you have other instances, sometimes people, I always say, is it a t-shirt and hot dog event or is it an event where people are going to go and spend money? That's always the way I try to think of it. Brian may look at it differently, but sometimes I always think of Monster Jam. When you take your kid to Monster Jam, you're probably planning to buy a t-shirt and a corn dog. You're not planning to spend a couple $100 on something. The Mint 400 might be a little different than that, though. I think people go with a roll of cash in their pocket sometimes.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah, but I think KOH is a great event for us where people, they're there, they're camping, they're hanging out, they're around their camper for a lot of hours. You're not out just tearing up KOH the whole time. So, we sell a lot of product because people have their families out there, their kids want something to do. It's not cheap to go out and take your vehicle out to KOH and compete and have your camper and all that stuff. So, spend a couple $100 to give yourself something to do with your kids while you're at your camper is a big opportunity for us. We do pretty well there. And I think Mint's probably close to that similarly.
Yeah. The mints, like you said, people go to Vegas with the intention to at least gamble. Most people do, right? So depending on how they do the night before, typically dictates how much they're going to spend at that big.
Yeah, that is true. And it's kind of fun. It's an event where you go partially for the environment, partially for the entertainment, partially for the excitement. And then, hey, it's nice to be in Las Vegas or it's nice to be in the desert. So right. I like that family aspect. And Chris, you just mentioned that you're a family brand. So right. Dad might have raced raced a real car and then buys an RC car for the children or plays with RC cars. We used to have an RC track in our front yard for a long time. My kids have kind of aged out now. But it definitely is a family business. So with that in mind, and you're looking for brand ambassadors, are you looking for people who represent families, or are you looking for sort of the tough guys and the bad guys out there that get the most publicity? What attracts you to the brand ambassadors who represent Horizon's brands?
Yeah, we do try to find someone who's going to have, that. And again, family doesn't necessarily mean it has to be squeaky clean. There are certainly cool brands, there are brands that are endemic and mean something to that target audience. Brian is great at that, identifying, like he said, when we're developing a new product, we're making a U4 vehicle, we're not trying to put Nike on the side of a U4 car. That doesn't make any sense. That's not going to make any sense. We're not just slapping stickers on the side. We want to find endemic brands that are going to speak to that customer. So we want them to be cool. But yeah, we do look for someone who's going to represent our company values where, we are very family oriented. If you're the bad boy of your race series and you win every race, you're probably still not for us because we would rather have the guy who's going to have a strong family bond and be a good positive role model than the guy who everybody hates, but he wins every time. And I know there are other brands that say, we just want the guy who's in victory lane. That's not really that's not our primary motivation.
That's true. A lot of endemic brands are trying to prove their functionality. The tire brands,
right.
The suspension brands, engine manufacturers, they're looking for teams that can put them on the podium to say, hey, our product helped win the championship.
Right.
With Hughes, you're just trying to let people have a good time, and
right.
you don't have to be first, second, or third place to have a good time. You can still race and have a great time. Brian,
Yeah,
what is it that you look for when you look for teams that are representing your brands? And how do you have any long-term teams? Are they all do they all renew every year? Or how does it what does that sponsorship look like traditionally for Losi?
Yeah, I mean, for us, what I look for is whenever we're having this conversation, it's man, my dad bought me a Losi when I was 9, and then we would play with that, and then he got me a go-kart, and from the go-kart it went to side by side, because that he lived literally our brand, right? That's what our brand is about. Our brand is about, you know, the parent, the guardian, the father, the mother working with their child and teaching them the basics of, you know, fixing things, you know, righty tighty, lefty loosey. A lot of kids don't know that these days. So to me, it's great whenever an athlete comes up to me, or an ambassador comes up to me and can essentially, he lives our brand, he understands our purpose. That is the first thing that I look for, because that is an easy message for both of us to share. But yeah, to answer your second question, we haven't had an agreement yet where nobody's renewed. You know, thankfully we're in the business of selling toys, which everybody loves. Not cups, right? So that's what I typically say. It's easy for me to sell, or to close a deal when it comes to toys.
Yeah, that's true. Have you ever sponsored a team that you've never met?
Never.
No.
Never. I don't think every single team or ambassador that we have that is a strong ambassador for us pretty much started as like, you know, we'll scratch your back and you scratch ours type situation. You know, hey, yes, I can help with this event, or hey, you know, I'm a photographer, for example. You know, Larry Chen helped us out recently on a big release with the Axial brand. That led to more of an ambassador deal that's now leading to actual paid jobs, you know. So, but he was so passionate about RC as a child, and he has a 4-year-old kid that he enjoys RC with. So it made perfect sense for him.
Mm-hmm.
So, but yes, it's always been, it's, you know, we've always crawled, we walked, and then we ran. We've never just gone straight into running.
And then, okay, that's a good point. So I'm assuming that most sponsorships start out just with product as opposed to $1 million check or a lot of cash. You're starting with product, crawl, like you said, before you walk.
Yeah, typically, you know, it evolves around one of the projects that they have going on that we can help or tag ourselves with, right? That's one thing that we look for too, is I should not tell you how to market yourself, or I should not tell you what the marketing campaign is going to look like. It's, hey, what is your brand? What is the YouTube series? What are you doing on social media? And how can we integrate our brand into that? Let's see how that works. If we see some return on investment, let's take it to the next level. And next thing you know, 3-4 years in, you know, we're best buds.
I like that. And then, so if a new team now is in a series and notices that there's not a lot of RC cars that are promoted through that series, and they think that they would be a good fit for you, how can they get your attention? What's the best way for them to meet you or to show you that they can potentially become a marketing partner for you? What's a good way for a team to get your attention?
I prefer to actually to learn about them organically. That's what I look for. So if I'm on social media and I start seeing your social pop up on my feed, and then I go hang out with, you know, other coworkers and they're talking about you, that's the best introduction in my opinion. And then whenever we're at the Mint or we are PRI, you see our booth, you come up. It's not so much this, hi, I'm Joe. It's, oh my God, you're Joe from so-and-so. I've seen your content. And that introduction is already strong. And then the conversation is easier to go from there. So that's kind of, you know, what I would say to, you know, prospects.
When you do notice a new team, or when someone is sending you something, how many decks or proposals do you get? Or how many times are you approached by people who perhaps you haven't met yet, looking for sponsorships? It's a question I try to ask all the guests, is to get an idea and to let the audience know just what their competition is for your attention. Do you get a lot of decks and proposals on a daily or weekly basis and at events, or do you have to go searching for representatives?
No, we definitely don't have to put much effort into finding new people. You know, at the Mint 400, I believe I received 6 decks. Through social media, we get them constantly. We also get a lot of, you know, people that want to review or test our product, or, you know, they have YouTube channels that they just want us to send products for free, and they'll do unboxings. And it's just, we do get a lot of requests for that kind of stuff.
I guess that's probably pretty popular now. The influencers wanting to review and test on their YouTube channels. You're starting to see that a lot with, you know, everything from cameras to equipment. Um, it's funny how this new era is now allowing us all to be media producers. And
Right.
Chris, right before you and I were chatting earlier, and you had mentioned that you have a race car driver that all flies airplanes. And so people do more than just, surface. I guess you have surface and air, and perhaps a surface real racer can represent in the sky, in the air. How does that work?
Yeah, again, it goes back to kind of this genuine interest. So the racers, probably someone many of the folks that listen to this will at least have heard of, a gentleman by the name of Juan Pablo Montoya, who's been a Horizon fan and I think Indy champion a couple
familiar.
times.
I can't figure out why, but it sounds familiar.
Yeah, pretty well. But the way we got connected to him was he was at a flying field and loves our airplanes and they'll fly, and just wanted to really work with us because he's so passionate about it that, he wanted to be more involved and ask how he could help, promote the hobby. And, he has a big international reach, obviously, with him being from Colombia, with racing in almost every professional series, on-road series out there. And we've built that over time. And now his son, Sebastian, is starting to race, and we're starting to, work with Juan and Sebastian a little bit because, at the end of the day, we don't have to. A lot of times, agreements are made for when things don't go well. We always look for partners that we're not going to have to, be knocking on your door saying, hey, you agreed to 2 social media posts per month. You didn't do them last month. We want the people who are posting, 4 or 5 because they're so into it and they know that it helps build their brand. It helps build the rest of their business and it keeps their fans engaged. And we just want to be part of that. When we can get that kind of partnership where the driver, the athlete understands how to pull all of us forward, including his own brand, that's when things can get interesting. And I would just add to what Brian said, one of the ways that we're starting to see some pretty serious money in monetizing it is through this social media reach and through an affiliate program we're starting to build. So if you can show us that you can engage a customer base and you can drive traffic and that traffic converts to our sites, we're happy to share some of that success with an athlete, with a driver. Historically, we've done it more through, monetizing, making replica vehicles. So, and we're still happy to do that. We have some very successful relationships like with Casey Curry, where we do that. But this idea of turning an ambassador into an affiliate, I believe is the future. For at least the way we engage.
Yeah, I think so too. We're seeing a lot of that now where if you can refer business, then you can get a royalty on that referred business all across the board. It works very well in a digital world, in fact, where
absolutely
people's online and digital connections can then connect you to their followers and friends and other network. How important is social now in terms of marketing versus traditional marketing or even at event marketing? I know some brands are going 100% social. They're going all in and getting rid of all television, getting rid of all prints. Are you still across the board in terms of your marketing and advertising, or are you focusing on any 1 or 2 areas?
We are definitely heavy in social. We have a product that shows well through video, much more so than a print ad. You can definitely show the speed, the jumping through the air. You can show the experience. You can show the fun that people are having through video. I think a lot of user-generated content, like you said, is so popular now and is very powerful. And it speaks to that peer-to-peer kind of testimonial as opposed to, if Brian and I tell you Losi's great, you may believe us, but if you have lived it and you love it, people are going to listen to you if they're a friend or somebody who follows you. So we're definitely heavy into social media. We have some segments where we have still a pretty traditional customer base. So we still do some print advertising. Horizon actually publishes our own customer magazine, much like Harley has the Harley Owners Group and they have a quarterly magazine to engage their customer. We have a magazine we call Transmitter, TX, that we send to our most loyal customers. And it's a lifestyle magazine. It's people at Mint 400. Brian will have an article in there about, the Mint 400 and how we interacted and sponsored that event. We'll have things like that. So we really feel like, people bounce around, but clearly, the lead of marketing now is digital and social. We try to use our events. So like the Mint 400 is a content creation opportunity for us. I mean, the race, it's cool, it's fun, it's exciting, it's content. I mean, I don't know who won the Mint last fall. I'm sorry if I offend anybody. Brian probably does, but I can tell you,
he knows it was Rob.
Yeah, I can tell you though, the content, the imagery, the sponsorship Losi had of the section of the racetrack and what we've done with that content, that matters to us a lot. And that has a lot of value.
So when you're looking for the content, and I agree with that, events are probably the best place to capture content, at least, during a race, because that content is relevant. Are you capturing that content on your own as a marketing people that go to the event, or are you relying on your brand ambassadors and sponsor teams to give you that content? I'm assuming it's a fair mix of both, but how much, or maybe this goes to Brian. Brian, how much of the content do you and your marketing team actually go out and collect versus how much of the content do teams create for you and give to you to use?
I would say 70 to 75% is actually through Losi ourselves. And then the rest is through, part of our deal with Mad Media and the Mint 400 is that we do get access to their content pool. And also the sponsors that we work with, for example, Casey Curry, he will obviously post up a lot and tags us a lot using the cars or the photo of the real car, that kind of stuff. So, but I would say majority of the contents, it's ourselves out there with cameras.
Good. Now, are there any series or are there any products that are on the horizon? There's a little interesting pun on words there that, you might need content for going forward.
Yeah, I think that's one thing where, it's only been honestly about 18 months to 2 years where Losi's, because it takes so long for us to produce product, that you've been seeing this new wave for Losi, where, it used to be a lot of our product was just a standard car underneath with a generic livery. That was like the Lucas Oil car, for example, that we worked on with you. Versus now, the laser nut, Cody Wagner's laser nut U4 car, the cage and everything is molded to replicate his car. So they're much more specialized, much more scale. And we're seeing that the more that we do that, the more detail we put into a product, the more the consumers love it, the more they can associate with it, the more they want to buy it. So now now that we have a good grasp of the U4 segment, the trophy truck segment with the car behind me, we have the our Losi drag segment that we're starting to do more bodies for. So we're trying to kind of start reaching out our network and reach out to all these different segments that we still feel fit our branding.
Excellent. So, and I'm curious how long a vehicle will last. Chris, I don't remember when it was, maybe 7-8 years ago, you were at one of my marketing summits, and it was when I did the speed dating among different brands. Yes. And you sat with Rockstar, and that meeting ended up in the Rockstar, what was it, a gas-powered boat?
We had several products. We had some short course. We had some various short course vehicles. Yeah, we had the Rockstar boat, gasoline powered boat.
I remember that. That was badass.
We had several products that leveraged that sponsorship. Probably our longest standing one, kind of strangely, is Musgeico. We've had that for probably at least a dozen years. We really seek, no matter what we do, to have long-term relationships. We really don't want hey, we're going to come in, we'll work with you this season, we're on to the next thing next season. Like Brian said, part of it is it takes us 12 months to develop a vehicle. So if we're in it for one season, we may be done with the season before we get the product done. So, Brian mentioned, Cody and LaserNut. That's a great relationship we have now. Casey, Axial's worked with Casey for years as well. So, we're pretty picky about choosing new partners. We want to make sure it's a good fit. But once we work with someone, we try to, like Brian said, learn how to crawl, walk, and then we want to run and run fast as we realize how to work together and how we can make this work for both of us.
So that was actually where I was leading to on this question is, if you do if you meet a new brand ambassador for a year and you're starting to work with that person and building a replica of his or her car, and it takes sometimes 18 months to 2 years to build that car, the RC car, but suddenly the sponsorship ends, can you still use the livery on that car in the future? Is that how the deals work? In other words, is the Rockstar boat still out there? Are the Rockstar Pro Trucks still out there, even though perhaps you're no longer partnered with either Rockstar or the drivers who had those relationships with you in the first place? Or do you have to stop the production of that product when the sponsorship ends?
Yeah, so for us, logistically or legally, yes, we do have a sell-off period to where if anything does happen within the athlete or the associated sponsors, we have typically 6 months to a year to sell off any stock just to protect ourselves. But one of the things that, exactly. But one of the things that we actually look for is, athletes that actually own their own assets. So for example, Cody Wack owns that U4 vehicle. The main sponsor, which is LaserNet, is his own company. So it's very unlikely that that sponsor is going to walk away from him, right? Because that's his own company feeding that race team. Same thing with Casey Curry. On the side, the main logo, that is Monster Energy, but behind that is still Curry Enterprises, right? And he owns that truck. So it's not, a lot of these drivers are really reliant on their major sponsor funds to race, where a lot of the partners that we end up working with, they're in a self-funded through other businesses that they have full control of. So that is one thing we take into consideration. If your race program is heavily dependent on another sponsor, then we want to make sure we have an even better relationship with that sponsor in case something does go south.
All right, actually, that makes sense, because I was wondering about that. What happens when the team is no longer sponsored by, let's say, a certain brand? Can you still use that? But that's a good explanation. Sell-off period. I haven't heard that before.
Right.
Yeah, and it can be tough, if a race team, even, if like when we were working with Rockstar, we worked a lot with their Supercross team, and when they go from Yamaha to, Husqvarna, even can cause some hiccups for us, because a lot of times, the master agreement is associated with the sub-sponsors too. And now all of a sudden, not only are you talking to Rockstar, you got to figure out, the manufacturer relationship as well. So like Brian said, we've done a lot of this though. And so it's pretty easy. And again, if you pick the right people, you always figure out how to make it work. If you pick somebody who doesn't really want to be a partner, at some point, you're going to end up in a scuffle. It just doesn't matter. So if people go into it with the right intentions, even when you part ways knowing you may end up back together at some point in the future.
Well, you and I know that, we've known each other a long time, and we became friends first when we're both in marketing. You've advanced all the way up through the ranks, and now you're running one of the biggest RC car companies in the world. And all I have to do is text or call you, and you come on the show, as opposed to writing a formal proposal and getting to know. It is all about relationships. There are no written documents among friends. I think everything is a handshake. And I realize that in business, sometimes you have to have everything in writing because it goes through legal, but it starts out with that relationship.
It does. And I was just going to mention too, when you asked earlier about us sponsoring people, that we've never met, and this really well, if somebody gives us a cold proposal, even if we were interested, the first thing we're going to do is ask around, and we're going to find somebody who knows them. We're going to find somebody who's worked with them. We're going to find another sponsor, and we're going to say, hey, is this team good? Is this guy good? Is this gal good? Is this somebody we want to work with? And people will tell you real quick, like, hey, you should run, not walk away from that person. They're super solid. Jump in. They're awesome. You're going to love it. But whatever the truth is, it'll proceed before we ever speak to you in person.
So
we're going to know.
What is a good way for people to get to know you, or the different brand managers in the different categories? Obviously they want to, people on the call and people who might be watching the recording of this later are interested in getting a sponsorship or form a partnership with Horizon or Horizon's brands. What is a good way to do that and set themselves apart?
You want
do
to
you
take
like
that,
when
Brian?
people approach you at PRI and Seaman hand you a deck? If you're at a show and someone hands you a deck, do you like that, or what's a better way to do it?
Of course, I always look at it and always be respectful, but it typically never leads anywhere, honestly. I think for the people in this call, the people listening that do want to approach us, it's really just about understanding what makes you unique, right? Because there's never a shortage of cars that want our stickers or want our money, right? Or want some kind of deal. So it's really, what do you have to offer in a sense of value? And it's not always just, like you said, it's not about the podium. It's not about becoming in first. For us, maybe you have access to, maybe you're from a town that is really small, but you're really well known and respected in that town. Okay, well, maybe if you have a lot of influence within that community, that's something to consider. Maybe you have a nice piece of land with a motocross track or a full-scale track that we can use for our videos. That's an asset that we can then use that's local, preferably, right? So I think it's don't look at it from an exposure standpoint. We're not interested in essentially, we don't, and with all due respect, we don't need your help to sell more RC cars. And you know what I'm saying? We don't need you to, that's our business. What is your business? What is your personal brand? And how do we connect those two together? So I think before you approach anybody or approach us, make sure you have that in line. You know, it's fine if you're going to go to 20 out of 20 races this year and be here and be there. That's fine. That's more of an exposure play. But what are we really going to get out of it?
And I guess a lot of that would be understanding what your business goals are and your marketing goals, because any sponsored team will become an extension of your marketing, obviously. How do racers or properties know what your goals are? What's a good way for them to learn and understand your business? Let's say they don't know your business very well because they don't have an RC car, and they want to represent you. They think they might be a good fit, but they don't know where to start. How do they learn more about what your goals are for a specific brand? Like, you have many brands. How do you know what brand targets what market versus another market?
Well, I think for that, it should all happen organically, right? I think the best way for you to understand what Losi's about is to be a part of Losi.
Excellent.
Right. That's what I always love when the story comes up of my dad bought me or my grandfather bought me a Losi car years ago. So whenever you live our brand and then you're into that industry organically, you can compare us to the competition or to one of our other brands. So I don't have to tell you that. Like you said, there's not a formal document. If I have to tell you what the Losi brand's about, then you're not going to be the best messenger for it. So if you really want to be a part of us, then be a part of us organically first. Especially with your children, learn what it's about, understand the brand, and then let's go from there.
And I think that holds true across all brands and all kind of personalities. I've seen at races. I've seen a race car driver, and this is a true story. I'm not going to call him out. One year he was a cool energy drink guy. The next year he was a farmer, real tree kind of country guy. The next year, I mean, the brands just didn't fit and match. When you go from real tree to Monster or Red Bull or Rockstar, you kind of have to know your market and know who the brand is targeting. So, and then know what the company's doing going forward.
That would be my advice, just to build on what Brian said a little bit, is, first of all, know your brand, know what you're trying to promote, what you stand for. Again, are you going to be the country guy who speaks to real tree, or are you the Monster Energy guy? Know who you are. Do some research on us. I think if you watch some Losi videos, if you watch the Horizon YouTube channel, you subscribe to our social media, in about an hour of homework on social media, you would have a good feel for what we're trying to bring through either the Losi brand or the Horizon brand. At that point, figure out how you can put the two together and what can you do to help, grow your brand, but also help us find that crossover of customers, that if we're engaging them through RC and you're engaging them through Full Scale Motorsports, and that's helping them be more of an avid race fan, we both win.
Yeah.
So, Brian talked a lot about the value of social media. If you can do, we have some great videos. We worked last season and we're going to work with them more, but Michael McDowell and the Cup Series, and, he grew up racing RC cars. He now has 4 kids. He did a ton of great videos in his garage. His crew loves Losi. They're huge Losi fans. So they would do these videos of doing burnouts in the garage, and just, he had this great story. He came on our podcast, and one of his kids drove an Arrma car into the creek, and it took him about 2 hours to get it out from submerged in about 4 feet of water. He said they dried it off and kept driving it. I mean, talk about a testimonial. Perfect. And, again, perfect. He's a dad too. So he had to, I'm guessing he's the one who had to get in the creek to get the thing out of there. But he was so blown away that it still worked after being at the bottom of a creek for 2 hours.
Oh, that's,
and
awesome.
They dried it off and boom, they're back to it, and you could just tell he was telling this story and just the experience with his kids. That's what we're trying to create, is just experiences with families. Brian's talked about that a lot. So understand how you can plug into that to be part of that. Spend a little time to build a relationship with us. You don't need to send us your proposal 20 times through LinkedIn. We got it the first time.
Yeah.
Find out how to get to us. Again, how do we get to people? We find out how to get to them. We have relationships with people like you, and we say, hey, we'd really like to get to know so-and-so. Can you introduce us? This is all a great network, and you're a master of this, Alex. I'll give you a plug here as we're starting probably to wrap up, but people like you are great at this, making sure that you get people that can help each other out together. And if it's not a fit, I'd say don't waste your time. Again, if you want to be the bad boy and you want to be I'm going to win at all costs, but I'll get you on the podium. yeah, you should probably go talk to the endemic sponsors, because that's what they need and want. They want to be able to say, we're the champ of all these races last year, this series, this race, everything. That's great for us because you get more camera time when you're up front. We get that too. But at the end of the day, it's the social media and helping tell our story of what a great family experience this can be and how you can learn from it. That's what we really want to promote at the end of the day.
Well, that is the perfect segue to heading over to my other camera so I can let some of the attendees just chat with you guys personally. And Tammy's saying we do have one question in the chat room, but before we get to that question and before I go to the other camera and we do the little group chat with the attendees, I want to see if you can recall a real quick story, Chris, when we were in an auditorium and we were at one of our summits, a marketing networking summit, and Horizon had just developed these really cool, very small miniature helicopters. And you gave one to everybody in attendance, a couple hundred helicopters you gave out as a gift to all the attendees. Thank you again for that. It was great. And, we were all, I don't know how to fly a RC helicopter. I didn't then, I should say. And so you were showing me, and we're in the middle of a room with what, 250 people, and the helicopter starts to go up and it's flying around. And all of a sudden the look on your face changed, like, uh-oh. And people don't know this, but at the exact same time that Chris was flying the little helicopter indoors, the giant room that we were in, their air conditioning turned on, and it had big suction vents, and it started to suck the helicopter up into the event. So do you remember that and what happened?
I do. Yeah, I had a moment there where I thought, oh man, I'm either going to drop this on somebody's head, or it's going to get sucked into the HVAC system, or it's going to be a pretty spectacular crash. I do remember, being able to get it back under control. And then I remembered as I was coming back in, we were with Lucas, at the Lucas sponsorship thing. And I believe it was Forrest's grandson.
Yes, Forrest's grandson
was at the event and was probably 6 years old or so. And everybody starts saying, land it in his hand. And I will tell you guys too. I mean, Brian knows this. I worked on the car side of the business, the surface side of the business. I was probably not the person who should be flying in a room full of 250 people, but I was asked to do it. So I did it. And yeah, so Forrest's grandson holds out his little hand like this, about a foot from his face, and I'm having mental images of putting this poor kid, big nick in his forehead, with a helicopter blade. And I will say to a little bit my surprise, I had a perfect landing and was able to get it out of the HVA system and right into this little boy's hand, and everybody thought I was quite the ace helicopter.
Yeah, you got a standing ovation. I mean, that was amazing. That was awesome.
Yeah,
that was one heck of
it could have ended far worse, Alex. So I'm glad all's well that ends well.
Yeah, that is true. That was a fun event. I'll never forget that, and we're never gonna live that one down. So Tammy, what is the question that's in the chat room?
Okay, actually, there's
Tammy's mic on.
Yes.
Okay.
2 questions. First question: if there's a market and an option to bring Horizon into a sport and work with a sanctioning body / association, does Horizon listen to those opportunities, and when is that window to do so, as typical sponsor windows are September through November?
So I forgot to ask your fiscal year. I usually do that, and this question reminded me. When is your budget decision, and if there are opportunities, when do you look at them?
We're on a calendar budget year, so that's simple. A lot of times we are doing our planning in that Q4 like everyone else. We do budget our program out through the year. We understand, different race cycles, different opportunities are on different time schedules. August, September period is probably when we're really starting to put the big opportunities out there together. We do work with some sanctioning bodies. Again, the Mint 400, for example, Brian works with the Martelli brothers who put on that race. With King of Hammers, we actually work with the folks who put that event on. We're actually working with the sanctioning bodies that are putting those events on. So I would say, yes, we do. It kind of depends. There are certain segments that we participate in, and that's where we try to draw more correlation, but we do. I would say, the best way is to reach out to probably, Brian. I'm going to give out his cell phone number right now. No, I'm just making him nervous. But, reach out to us. You don't need to provide a deck, though. I think an introductory, tell us very briefly. If the email is more than what I can see on the screen, I probably don't read it because I've got other things to do. If you can tell me in a really short paragraph what you're doing and why you think it'd be a good fit, we can take 15 minutes, or if Brian's leading it, if it's Losi, he'll take 15 minutes and hear what you have to say. Then maybe we can talk about how to build that relationship and figure out if it's an opportunity.
Yeah, for me, I would add to that. No, good. I would just piggyback off of that and say, try to make it a win-win for you and for us. We've had it happen a lot to where it is this deck and it's this, 6-figure, and here's what you're going to get. You're going to get this much spotlight and all this stuff. You know what? Just send me an invite. Hey, we're going to have this event. It's an hour away from you. Come down. We like to show you what we're about. Let's put you in a car. Let me see it firsthand. Let me experience it. Let me see the passion, and let me connect my marketing mind with yours there at the event. And then let's talk about it. And I think that's an easy way to crawl before we can even walk, right? So I think that's the best way, is honestly kind of just treat your potential partners kind of like VIPs for a day, and let them experience it for themselves. And when I say win-win, at the end of the day, if nothing happens, at least you tried and the partner got to experience something new and new that.
And that's very consistent with what you just said earlier. Get to know you first before you start sending out requests for money or product.
Right.
You want to get to know somebody. Right. Tammy says there's one more question, then we're going to jump to the other camera.
Okay, last question. I'm curious to know if your ambassadors bring B2B opportunities to you, and if that is something you consider when looking for new partners.
Yeah, I would say absolutely. And probably, Brian, I think like our new relationship in the no prep drag racing, working with Summit Racing is the one that immediately comes to my mind. We were kind of introduced to them. That's a segment through the PRI crowd that's really popular. And so we were able to release, an RC drag car with the Summit livery, and that product is available through Summit Racing. So that is a great kind of win-win, as Brian said earlier as well. If you can help us physically reach new customers with, through sales channels that maybe we don't have today, that's awesome. We would love to hear those. Same thing though, send an invite, send us a short email, let us know what you're thinking. We'll get on a call. Brian can get on a call, and then let's, kind of see how it works before we, worry about, hey, we think you can sell 20,000 vehicles or something. And like Brian said too, let us put our thoughts into it too. We know our business and our goals really well. If you can give us an opportunity to learn a little bit about you, we can work together rather than you trying to kind of figure it all out when you don't really know our business. But yeah, that's a great opportunity.
All right, well, listen, guys, we're at the hour mark, so thank you so much. And as you know, we're going to do a real quick Q&A with anybody who stayed on the line that wants to now just chat real quick. This was really good. It was very informative. And man, I'm looking forward to seeing you guys both at King of the Hammers. Hopefully you come out, Chris. I know Brian will be there at least for a day. And then again, the Mint 400. So I'll be at both events.
All right.